Curious Kid Cast, here we go. Ooh, yeah. Questions poppin', minds will blow. Big ideas, they're taking flight. Let's explore, feel the light. Why, what, where, and how? Big answers, we'll find them now. Curious minds, the world will comb. Ask away, let's bring it home.
Hey there, curious kids, and welcome back to the Curious Kid Cast. I'm your host, Andy, and today we're diving into one of the most mind-bending questions about nature. Have you ever watched a butterfly fluttering through the sky and wondered, does it remember crawling around as a caterpillar? That's a brilliant question. And the answer is more surprising than finding out your math teacher used to be in a boy band. So let's start at the very beginning. Before we can talk about butterfly memories, we need to understand how these amazing creatures come to life. Imagine you're a tiny egg stuck to a green leaf waiting to hatch. That's the very first stage of a butterfly's life. An egg no bigger than a sprinkle on your donut, and probably just as sweet, but please don't lick butterfly eggs. That's weird. After a few days, pop, out comes a tiny caterpillar, also known as a larva. And wow, is this little creature hungry. Think of it like that famous book character, the very hungry caterpillar, except this guy makes me look like a light eater. These caterpillars are basically eating machines with legs and an attitude. That's their main job. Eat, eat, and eat some more. They're like your cousin Jimmy at Thanksgiving, but instead of complaining about the cranberry sauce, they just keep chomping leaves. They need to grow as fast as they can because they have a big transformation ahead. As they grow, they shed their skin. Sometimes up to 5 times. Imagine outgrowing your clothes 5 times in just a few weeks. My wallet already cries every time I need new shoes, so this would probably send me straight to ramen noodles for a month. But while they're busy munching and growing, their tiny brains are also hard at work. And yes, caterpillars do have brains. They're just really, really small, like smaller than my attention span during a boring meeting. We're talking grain of rice small, which is still bigger than my brain feels when I can't find my keys and I'm literally holding them. Here's the cool part. Caterpillars can actually learn things. Scientists have tested this by giving them certain smells along with a little reward like sugary water or a tiny poke that says, hey, pay attention, fuzzy dude. And guess what? The caterpillars learn to react to those smells, just like your dog learns that the word walk means it's time to lose its absolute mind. Or like how I learned that the sound of my landlord's footsteps in the hallway means I should probably turn down my music before they knock. Once the caterpillar is big enough and thoroughly stuffed with leaves, something absolutely magical happens. It finds a safe spot, hangs upside down like a tiny green bat, and spins itself into a shell called a chrysalis. Inside that chrysalis, the caterpillar is about to go through one of the most amazing transformations in nature, metamorphosis, which is a fancy word that basically means time to get super weird. Now here's where things get really weird. And I mean really, really weird, like weirder than when my dad tries to use slang and says things like, that's totally tubular, my dude. I physically cringe every time. Inside the chrysalis, the caterpillar's body doesn't just grow wings and change a little bit. Oh, no. It turns into a kind of bug soup. I'm being completely serious here. It basically melts enzymes, which are like tiny molecular scissors with attitude problems. Break down most of the caterpillar's body. If you opened a chrysalis in the middle of metamorphosis, which please don't do because that's ruder than interrupting someone's birthday cake moment, you'd see green goo. It's like nature decided to make a smoothie, but forgot to add the fruit and made it gross instead. But somehow, and this is where my brain starts making dial-up internet noises, out of that goo emerges a brand new creature. A butterfly with wings, antennae, and a long coiled tongue called a proboscis for sipping nectar from flowers. It's like the most extreme makeover show ever, except instead of new clothes and a questionable haircut, you get a completely different body and the ability to fly. Take that, reality TV. So here's the big question again. If a caterpillar turns into soup and then gets rebuilt as a flying rainbow, how could a butterfly remember anything from its caterpillar days? It's like asking if you'd remember your childhood if you were turned into pudding, mixed up in a blender, and then rebuilt as a completely different person who could fly. Which, now that I think about it, sounds like either the best or worst superhero origin story ever. Let's talk about bug brains for a minute and try not to think about how weird that sentence is. Caterpillars and butterflies don't have brains like humans do. Their brains are much smaller, about the size of a grain of rice, and they don't think in the same way we do. They're not sitting around wondering about the meaning of life, why socks disappear in the laundry, or whether hot dogs are sandwiches, the important stuff. But that doesn't mean they're brainless. Even though their brains are smaller than the eraser on my pencil, they can do some pretty impressive stuff, like flying without crashing into trees, finding flowers that aren't plastic, avoiding things that want to eat them, and even remembering stuff. It's like having a flip phone from 2005. It looks ancient and weird, but it can still make calls and probably survive being dropped down the stairs. Scientists used to think that metamorphosis completely erased a caterpillar's memories, like hitting the factory reset button on your brain. After all, if your whole body turns to soup, it's pretty hard to imagine your brain surviving, right? It would be like expecting your phone to remember your photos after you put it in a blender, mixed it up, and somehow rebuilt it as a completely different device. Spoiler alert, that doesn't usually work. In one amazing experiment, scientists trained caterpillars to be afraid of a certain smell by giving them a tiny electric shock when they smelled it. Don't worry, the shock didn't hurt them. It was more like a little buzz to get their attention, kind of like when you rub your socks on the carpet and then touch your little brother. After a few training sessions, the caterpillars learned to avoid that smell faster than I avoid Brussels sprouts at dinner. Smart bugs. Then the scientists let the caterpillars form chrysalises and turn into butterflies. This is where it gets interesting, people. Once the butterflies emerged, looking all fancy with their new wings and probably feeling pretty proud of themselves, they were tested again. And guess what happened? Seriously, guess. I'll wait. The butterflies still avoided the smell. That means they remembered what they had learned as caterpillars. Even after turning into goo, getting completely rebuilt, and basically becoming a different animal, some part of their tiny bug brain held on to that memory. My mind was officially blown, like I had to sit down, eat a peanut butter sandwich, and stare at the wall for 10 minutes just to process this information. My cat thought I was broken. So how can this happen? How can a memory survive a total body makeover that makes extreme home renovation shows look like gentle spring cleaning? It's like remembering your kindergarten teacher after being turned into jelly, shaken up like a snow globe, and reformed as a teenager with wings. It turns out not everything inside the chrysalis gets turned to goo. Thank goodness, because that would be really messy and probably smell terrible. Scientists have discovered that certain brain cells, especially the ones involved in learning and memory, can survive metamorphosis like tiny neurological superheroes. Think of these brain cells as the captain of a ship. Even when the ship is being torn apart board by board and rebuilt as a completely different vessel, maybe a yacht instead of a rowboat, the captain keeps the important maps and remembers where all the good snacks are hidden. Now, let's imagine what it would be like to be a butterfly with caterpillar memories. This is getting into some deep philosophical territory here, people. Maybe you'd remember the taste of your favorite leaf. Was it maple? Oak? That weird bitter one that made you make a face? Maybe you'd remember the perfect warm spot on a sunny branch where you used to nap between meals. That strange smell you learned to avoid because it meant trouble. The way the wind moved the grass you crawled through like a tiny green ocean. Would you remember the feeling of having no wings, just crawling everywhere like the world's slowest race car? The tickle of a ladybug walking past you, probably judging your life choices. That moment when you realized you were getting too fat for your own skin and needed to molt again. Awkward. That's harder to know because scientists can't exactly sit down with a butterfly and have a heart-to-heart conversation. Although wouldn't that be the most amazing interview show ever? I'd totally watch Butterfly Therapy. But even the tiniest spark of memory tells us that metamorphosis doesn't erase everything. It's like your brain has a secret backup hard drive hidden somewhere that survives even the most extreme changes. Kind of like how I can never remember where I put my apartment keys, but I can perfectly recall every embarrassing thing I've ever done at 3 in the morning. Let's pretend you were a butterfly for a minute. Try not to think about how weird that sentence is. Would you want to remember being a caterpillar? I mean, think about it. On one hand, caterpillar life was pretty limited. No wings means no flying, which is basically like being stuck on the ground level of life forever. No drinking sweet nectar from flowers. Just chewing leaves all day like the world's most boring salad. You had to hide from birds who thought you looked delicious, which is probably not great for self-esteem. It's like comparing having a sports car to crawling everywhere on your hands and knees. One is clearly better. But on the other hand, maybe you'd feel incredibly proud of your journey. Look how far I've come. I used to be a chubby little leaf muncher, and now I'm flying over gardens like a winged rainbow of awesome. Maybe remembering your caterpillar life would remind you to be patient, to keep growing, and that sometimes the best things come from the weirdest experiences. Like how I learned that falling off my skateboard taught me that helmets are actually pretty cool. The story of butterflies teaches us something really special. Change is not just possible, it's absolutely incredible. Caterpillars don't look anything like butterflies. They don't act like butterflies. They can't do butterfly things. But deep inside their little wormy bodies, they have the potential to become something completely different. And apparently, they get to keep some of the memories from the journey, which is honestly pretty cool. That's not just a neat fact about bugs that we'll forget by next week. It's also a reminder for us humans. You're always growing, learning, and changing into a better version of yourself. Maybe not as dramatically as turning into goo and sprouting wings, which is probably good because that would make buying clothes really complicated and school pictures would be weird. But you are becoming more wonderfully you every single day. And just like the butterfly, you get to carry the best parts of your journey with you. The lessons, the memories, the experiences that made you who you are. Except hopefully yours don't involve turning into soup. That would be concerning. Before we get to our quiz, and I know you're all dying to test your new butterfly knowledge, here are some absolutely mind-blowing butterfly facts that'll make you the coolest kid at lunch tomorrow. Some butterflies can taste with their feet. Let that sink in for a moment. Imagine if you could taste pizza just by stepping on it. Although that might make walking through the school cafeteria really overwhelming. Ew, I just tasted mystery meat with my left foot. There are over 17,000 species of butterflies around the world. That's more varieties than there are flavors of ice cream, types of pizza, and different ways my younger brother can annoy me combined. And that's saying something. Some butterflies live only a few weeks, while others can live up to a whole year. That seems completely backwards to me. I feel like if you're that beautiful, you should get to show off for way longer. It's like nature's cruel joke. Here, you get to be absolutely stunning, but only for a month. Have fun. And here's a weird one. Butterflies can't fly if their body temperature is below 55 degrees Fahrenheit. So basically, they're like me on a Monday morning. Cold and not going anywhere fast. All right, curious kids, it's time for our fun quiz. And by fun, I mean I'm going to test whether you were actually listening or just daydreaming about what you're having for lunch. I'm going to ask you 3 questions about today's episode. Give yourself a point for each one you get right. And no, you cannot phone a butterfly for help. Question 1. What does a caterpillar turn into inside its chrysalis before becoming a butterfly? And really, gross stuff is not specific enough. The answer is goo or soup. Nature's least appetizing smoothie. It's like the weirdest cooking show ever, except the final result is actually beautiful instead of something you'd feed to your enemy. Question 2. How big is a caterpillar or butterfly's brain? The answer is about the size of a grain of rice, which is still somehow bigger than my brain feels when my boss asks me to organize my desk and I just stare at the mess like it's written in ancient hieroglyphics. Question 3. In the scientific experiment, what did the butterflies remember from when they were caterpillars? This one's tricky, so think carefully. The answer is they remembered to avoid a certain smell they had learned to fear as caterpillars. Even after becoming completely different creatures with wings and everything, they kept that memory tucked away somewhere in their tiny brains. It's like having a superpower, but instead of flying or super strength, it's for remembering smells that might be dangerous. Still pretty cool. So, do butterflies remember being caterpillars? The answer is a big scientific yes. At least a little bit. Even after turning into goo, getting completely rebuilt like nature's most extreme home makeover and emerging as flying works of art, some butterflies can remember things they learned as chubby little leaf munchers. That's not just a cool science fact to impress your friends, though it totally will. It's a mind-blowing mystery that shows us how incredible and weird nature can be. And I mean that in the best possible way. Next time you see a butterfly fluttering past, maybe dancing through your garden or just showing off near some flowers, give it a little wave. It might just remember the time it was a chunky little caterpillar dreaming of the sky and wondering what it would be like to fly. Or maybe it's just thinking about where the best flower snacks are. With butterflies, you never really know, and that's part of what makes them so awesome. Thanks for joining me on another episode of the Curious Kidcast. I'm Andy, and I hope this episode made your brain buzz with excitement like a bee in a flower shop. Or like me, when I discover there's leftover pizza in the fridge. If you enjoyed today's show and didn't fall asleep during the science parts, make sure to share it with your friends and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Tell them Andy sent you, and that butterflies have better memories than most of the adults in your life. And if you have any questions you'd like answered on the show, drop them in an email to questions@CuriousKidcast.com or visit our website at CuriousKidcast.com. Until next time, keep being curious and keep asking the weird questions that adults think are silly.
Hey, let your